these teams have been moving super fast. So we have Edward on the call. One of my favorite updates has been automatic tool calling or function calling that's now available in the Python space. This, I believe, is like the most powerful, useful thing that's part of Semantic Kernel, both the .NET, Java, Python version, because basically you just give it all of the functions that you need to use. So in this case, it's importing a math plugin and a time plugin, and that is all that the AI needs in order to start helping the user complete a request. So in this case, let's see, there's some messages on, hey, what do people need? And it's able to use those. I think it has a back and forth chat. So definitely check this out. I think Edward has his hand raised if you want to tell the folks a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so indeed, this is really cool that it's in. And what's even cooler is that Evan has now added the function calling stepwise planner. So that is leveraging basically this same mechanism to have a new style planner that uses those function calling capabilities of the OpenAI models. We just pushed in a last addition to that, where if the arguments are wrong, it will give that back to the model, and it then gives a new set of arguments. So it's even getting better through that. And Evan was now working on the next release, so that should be out in the world in the next couple of hours.
Woohoo! So we're moving fast.
Yep.
I guess if you are, a show of hands, how many of folks are starting to use the Python SDK? It's okay if it's just a small amount of folks. Like we have 1, 2. Trickling. Oh, okay. We have some more. Okay, cool. So if y'all have questions today, you are well supported. We have both Edward and Evan on the call to help you out. Okay. So that's in the Python space.
Can I say one thing, Matthew? To interrupt you?
Go for it.
We also added the ability to pass the kernel arguments to custom functions now. So that was a request that didn't really happen previously. So we've added that capability so people can get chat history or other arguments passed into the kernel into their custom functions, and that's going to be released, as Edward said, in the next few hours.
Perfect. The other big update, so thank you, Sophia, for blogging about our .NET migration guide. So I know a lot of folks are still on pre-V1 Semantic Kernel, and we had a lot of breaking changes to really make sure that Semantic Kernel was as easy and as powerful as possible. A lot of the changes are a lot of naming changes, right? And so if you are having difficulty making those updates, we now have that all documented in our Learn site. If you find anything missing, let us know. We'll get it added. We want to make sure that all of you are supported during this journey of moving to V1.0. No, actually, I think we're at 1.6 at this point. So constantly updating. Okay, cool. That's all the updates from my side. And I guess anyone else from the Semantic Kernel side, I didn't miss anything. I think yes. Okay, cool. Well, by the way, go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing that we added in this release, I noticed that we couldn't actually install all of the dependencies for different connectors other than OpenAI, which we always install, directly through the package. So we now added that. So you now have the ability to use extras when you install. So you can do like Semantic Kernel and then brackets, Quadrant or Chroma, or whichever source you want to use. And then it pulls in the right version of those packages as well.
Oh, and there was also a regression on the .NET library with if you're trying to do function calling through prompts. That has been fixed with 1.6. So if you were running into issues, that has now been fixed, and that was pushed up last night for folks in Europe. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and dive into questions.
I'm seeing some in chat already. Josh, would love if you don't mind coming off of mute. If not, I'm happy to read it out as well.
Let's read it out.
Okay, cool. I'll go and read it out, Josh. So the difference between Semantic Kernel Planner, now the handle planner, and the stepwise planner, now function calling stepwise planner, is that just the one generates a plan and gives it back as a string, and then the second actually ties it to execute the plan based on what plugins it finds?
Great question. So like, what is the difference between all these different things? So we'll say handlebars planner right here. So the value of the planners that we see kind of long-term is it does create this plan object, this resource that you can then serialize and save for later, right? So that if you are worried or concerned about how do I minimize token use, improve performance, that artifact is really helpful because that means the second time someone asks the exact same question, instead of asking the LLM, hey, come up with it 5 steps, you have a parameterized plan that you can use to just get that user's request done, right? So you can use things like embeddings in order to get a plan back instead of asking an LLM to actually generate that plan. That's more or less possible now with the handlebars planner. We still have some work to do with the sequential planner to create that serialization that's configurable and reusable. But that's kind of where I see planners evolving and being different than what most folks are using, and I expect most folks to be using today, which is automatic function calling. So automatic function calling is using the function calling or tool calling capabilities that are native to the OpenAI models. And that's now available in the Gemini models and Claude models. With that, you're basically asking the AI, hey, here's these 5, 6, 10 different functions, iteratively call them until the user's requests are done. Yeah.
Mostly all of them are using function calling, right?
Yeah, so we'll get to that in a bit, but sequential planner uses function calling under the hood, right? It is what we found the best way of having the AI do automation because it's baked into the model. The model's been trained to do this type of calling. And so you get fairly high accuracy. It does a decent job picking the function and also choosing the arguments.
But
go ahead.
as far as I know, we don't have any more sequential planner, right?
Oh, we do have a sequential planner, yes.
Okay.
There's an automatic function calling sequential planner. Right?
Oh, right.
So for most folks, what I'm recommending, because we're still kind of like most companies are kind of still in the exploratory phase, seeing what's possible, using automatic function calling is what I recommend. As Semantic Kernel matures and as all of you mature, and we need to start worrying about what's the cost of this thing, what's the performance, how do we speed these things up? I'll see folks start migrating to these planners, both the handlebars one and the sequential planner one that's built on top of automatic function calling, so that you can start saving. Sorry, Evan, you're right. This is stepwise.
That's what I
That's what you're thinking. Yeah, sequential is no more. That's gone. Stepwise. So stepwise uses automatic function calling under the hood. So I would see folks start moving to those maybe after build or at build, right? But for the time being, I highly just recommend use automatic function calling, see what's possible, and we should be good to go.
As far as I understand, like a bit of clarification, a lot of people have asked in the Discord, what's the difference between function calling and a stepwise planner, right? And it's simply adding some more contours, some more prompts to make this decision what tool to use better.
Yes, so exactly. So with the stepwise planner, we've added some additional prompting to make automatic function calling behave a little bit more predictably. It may or may not work for your scenario. So you may want to just test it out, see what makes sense. A lot of my customer interactions, you all have very unique scenarios, and so you do need that level of customization of the prompt to get specific behavior. And it's hard to beat the capabilities of automatic function calling because you can control the entire prompt that you give to the AI. Which is, again, another reason why for most folks, I'd recommend automatic function calling. And then over time, the stepwise planner will have that plan object that you can then serialize and save. It's not there today, But once it is, that would be a reason why you'd want to upgrade to it.
Also, I would add that it's a recommended best practice, at least in my opinion, to use function calling, because otherwise, if you use stepwise planner, that requires a prompt. It's something done by Semantic Kernel. So it requires a callback to the client application or your computer where you're executing code of Semantic Kernel and going back. This way, it's executed directly on the model. More efficient.
Cool. Sophia, are there other questions?
There are. Tim has a really good one. How soon will agents be coming to Python and .NET?
Will it be for agents to be here? All right.
That's beautiful.
So we do have the experimental agents package in .NET. It's a very tightly coupled with the assistance API. We had a bunch of meetings even yesterday talking about what's our kind of plan for making it more abstract. And the hard challenge that we are trying to address right now is today with the assistance API, basically that chat history object that you use to do things like chat completion is managed in a server somewhere by OpenAI or Azure OpenAI, and it doesn't have all the capabilities that you would have with chat history, right? You can only put user messages. You can't manipulate it as much. When it actually goes to the agent, you don't get to decide which of the message actually goes there, right? So because of those differences of behavior, it's actually fairly non-trivial to create an agent abstraction where two agents powered by different chat history objects, so normal chat history, threads in the assistance API, and potentially something else in the future, have them actually talk to each other. So we are landing on a proposal. I would expect by either end of this week or early next week, we'll have a architectural design doc on what we are proposing to allow these different agents, these heterogeneous agents, to actually talk to each other. Once that's done, we'll start implementing it, and we're expecting to have that done in the next month or so. So that's in the .NET side. Once that's finalized and that's all working, my expectation is on the Python side, they'll be wrapping up the parity work to get Python to V1, right? And then they'll be able to pick up that work. So hopefully by build, we'll clearly have this abstraction ready in the .NET space, and either we're nearly wrapping it up or we're already done on the Python space so that you can use these agents to collaborate just like you would inside of Autogen. Yeah.
That's great. And then,
Go ahead.
oh no, I saw another question in chat, so go ahead.
Okay, then what about Autogen abstractions implemented in Semantic Kernel? Or
Yeah. So we're working right now. I'll say Autogen. So we're currently working with the so Autogen is a research team, actually just a floor below where I am right now. They predominantly are in Python. That's going to be its own kind of research project, and they'll keep pushing the bounds on things. We have heard on the .NET side that there's also an interest in using some of these abstractions. And we wanted to make sure that in the .NET space, you don't have to choose between Autogen or Semantic Kernel. So we're working with those contributors to make sure that when they do build the .NET flavor of Autogen, they're using the same abstractions as Semantic Kernel, so that, again, you don't have to choose. You can build an agent in Semantic Kernel and then have them collaborate inside of something like Autogen. So that's the plan there. In the Python space, the current Autogen team is pretty vocal about, hey, this is a research project. You shouldn't necessarily be using this in production. So we believe that a lot of work that we're doing to abstract agents, creating collaborative agent workflows within Semantic Kernel will take some of those best ideas in Autogen, productionize them, make them enterprise ready, so that if you do want to use Autogen inside of production environments, you can use Semantic Kernel to achieve that. Question. Cool.
fantastic.
Sophia?
Yeah, there were just some other really good points from Tim around the backlog. I know there's a lot of items that we're looking to get in our stable state of Python. And Evan had a comment in chat, but I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to add, Evan, around the Python backlog and what's being prioritized.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think the order is pretty decided, I guess. We've, got to the beta and we started completing issues or work items that we think are the next highest priority. And those now are landing as the new templating languages. So Jinja 2 and handlebars. Edward had done some work for the V1 concepts around handlebars. I know the Python package of handlebars isn't in as great a shape as it is in .NET. I don't know if you want to comment around that at all, Edward, but if there are going to be pain points or not. But we do want to bring in handlebars just because .NET uses handlebars and we want the parity there. Jinja 2 is such a heavily supported package in Python that we also want to introduce that. So those two are going on. Aside, we have a community member working on the pre and post invoke handlers. Those are there in a very basic state, and so the .NET does things by filters now, and we're going to implement that in Python. But I think those are next, kind of the next biggest things that we need. And then Jeffrey is working on the YAML support. So once we get the YAML support in, we can show the parity between using a YAML prompt in Python and loading that in .NET. So those are important. And then there's just some other cleanup, and supporting the OpenAI plugins is one we do need to pull into V1. So we're not too far off. We're getting there. We appreciate your support and everything as we move along. I think that's it. Tim, your question is, will those 3 or 4 be coming in the beta? That's the goal within the next couple of weeks to get those templating in, and the YAML support.
And Evan kind of hit on this. What I'm most excited about is what we're starting to see a lot of customers do is they'll have a Python team that's kind of doing the forward thinking, exploratory, like experimentation. We want to make sure that they're supported with Semantic Kernel. They can build things like their prompts, their agents, and if they use things like the YAML serialization, if they use things like handlebars, or maybe in the future we support liquid templates, you'll be able to then give that to your enterprise app developers, right? Your Java developers, your .NET developers, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to recreate everything. They're just taking those serializations of those AI assets, bringing them into their applications, and then you're kind of off to the races at that point. It just works.
Perfect. And then Jeffrey, I saw your question around Jinja 2 versus handlebars. Does that answer? Are there any additional questions you have? Feel free to come off of mute. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, just from the answers you already given, it sounds like the reasoning of questioning Jinja 2 versus handlebars is different levels of support for different programming languages. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, kind of the way I've been rationalizing it, this is obviously everyone in Python is pretty much using Jinja 2 right now. That's kind of like the de facto templating language for things like LangChain. And so we wanted to make it easy for those folks that have used things like LangChain before or use other SDKs, if they want to move into Semantic Kernel. We're going to support Jinja 2. They're going to feel loved. They're going to feel supported. It's going to be great, right? To the, I'm a Python developer and now I need to create assets for my enterprise teams. Jinja 2 doesn't necessarily have as much support in .NET, or no support in .NET, and it might be fairly weak in the Java side. And so we do want to support other templating languages like handlebars. I've also heard interest for Liquid, which is a templating language built by Shopify that has cross-language support, supporting these templating language so that as a company that is cross-language, you do have this common format that you can use across your teams.
Perfect. Sarah, I saw your question in chat around the code interpreter and integration. Would love to have you come off mute if you don't mind and elaborate a bit further.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any plan to integrate a code interpreter, because I'm working on something that I'm using Assistant and code interpreter is the most important piece that I needed for certain tasks. So just wondering if there is a plan for that.
Yeah, so with our experimental agent package, we do have support for I like to call them the built-in tools within the agent's work. So I think, let's see, agent tools. Let's see, code interpreter. Ah, look, here we go. We have an example. So here we can show that, hey, we can enable the code interpreter tool. My expectation is as this becomes less experimental, the syntax is going to change a bit, but we do want to make sure that we support these things. And if you want to just play around with it today, that is possible.
Is it available in Python SDK?
I see. It is not available yet in Python. It'll probably be closer to build before we're able to pick up some of the agent work within Python.
Got it. All right. Thank you. That's good news, though. I'll keep waiting for that. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And Tristan, I saw your question as well. There are no newbie questions. We're all learning. So would love to, if you want to come off of mute to elaborate further, would love to dive into it.
Sure. Yeah. So I was creating a fairly elaborate prompt just directly against GPT, and I needed something to some way to treat variables and define them. And so I just kind of decided to dump them in something that looked like handlebars, and it seems to work. And so I wasn't really clear how it's implemented differently in Semantic Kernel relative to just kind of a Hail Mary, use something looking like handlebars, and GPT seems to be okay with it, as I've done.
Yeah. So let's take a look at some of our getting started samples and we can walk through what is actually going happening behind the scenes. Okay, here we go. So what we're looking at in this prompt, we load in a function that can get the current time. We can invoke different prompts that goes to your model of choice. Let's say it's 3.5 turbo. And then here we actually have a prompt that is using, this is the vanilla semantic kernel built-in templating language. So this isn't handlebars, but it looks fairly close to it. So without looking at your code, I guess what I imagine might be happening is like you are constructing this prompt yourself and sending it to the LLM.
Yeah.
The value of using the templating language within semantic kernel is we kind of do that for you, right? There's no code here that's like injecting the different arguments. It's smart enough to grab the time information plugin and actually call it, right? And then as you start doing things like automatic function calling, actually passing all these arguments through the entire kind of chain of prompts and functions that you have, it gets increasingly more and more complex. And so by using kind of the built-in templating language within Semantic Kernel, we can handle that for you, right? We know that the prompt requires these 5 arguments, and when they are provided to us by an AI somewhere else, we're able to map those correctly. So that's the main values. We kind of simplify some of the wiring up of these things instead of you having to do it.
So it's basically using everything else in Semantic Kernel in handlebars, where I'm just happening to just kind of define some stuff in a complicated prompt and pass stuff to it from the input, and then it just uses that stuff. In this case, it's just accessing everything that Semantic Kernel can do.
Exactly. Like right here, like we're accessing this time plugin, so I'm not having to write additional code to actually invoke this function. Like it's just automatically doing it. And if there were, I don't know if I'd have to look around, but if we were using variables, again, I'm not having to write this additional code. It just knows that, hey, there's these variables. It can use the typing information that Semantic Kernel knows, right? So it's like, oh, this is a string, so we're going to just output it in. Oh, this is a number, so we're going to have to like cast it, right? So there's a bunch of value that Semantic Kernel can do to massage all of these arguments into a prompt that you would have to do yourself.
Understood. Okay.
Also, you can do that As you see there, it's not just using variables, it's invoking a function. So with handlebars, you can call a function and add that to a variable and reuse it later. So if you enter in a loop, you don't have to call it every single time, which you would have to do with vanilla semantic kernel prompt template, right? And it's quite powerful.
Yeah,
I think we need
that makes
an
sense.
example on handlebars.
Yeah. Yeah, here's kind of what these things
Oh
look
yeah, that's one.
Alrighty. Someone has their hand raised. If you want to come off mute.
Yeah, I just want to understand how that looks when you are doing it directly with ChatGPT, right? Could you share just a snippet of that prompt? Because I'm really curious, what do you mean by variables in ChatGPT directly? I just cannot wrap my head around that.
So imagine I've got a really big prompt where in part of it, in the system prompt, I'm basically instructing it that when something gets passed to you, you're going to do some stuff, right? And so one of the variables is input question, right? And then a question is provided from the user. But then there's a second set of data that also gets passed in, which is structured data. And there's various fields in the structured data. And so what I'm basically saying is I passed the whole structure as JSON. And then I've said for each of these fields in the JSON, and I'm representing the field name in handlebars. And then I'm saying that's what this field is and does and how you should handle it, right? And so basically just writing all of this all out in natural language rather than doing anything properly.
And then here's one of our YAML templates. This is kind of showing where our input variables are used. So here, this is the actual prompt. Tell a story about a given topic that's X sentences long. And then because we're using semantic kernel, we can define like, oh, this is a string, this is an integer. Actually, we don't have types in this, but you could. And then we're able to use this information elsewhere in the system to tell the AI like, hey, these are topics, this is a number, and it can actually auto-populate this information. So the value of semantic kernel is like you're able to provide this metadata that's used throughout the rest of the system to create some automation for you.
I'll try and put a redacted thing in the chat before the end of the session, if it helps at all.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. I'm not seeing anything else in chat, but would really love to hear from others. So I invite you to either add items in chat or come off of mute if there's other questions or items that you're going through.
Javon. Or Jivan.
Are you all able to hear me?
Yep, we can.
Yeah. So I had a quick question on what the team recommends on how to best deal with OpenAI services API version changes, right? So right now that's not exposed out to the consumer of the semantic kernel. So what is the recommendation when the version changes, and how do we kind of keep up with that, right? Is there a plan to kind of expose that version out so that we can make a change to it?
Oh, and then real quick, are you using Python or .NET, Java?
.NET.
No.
Yeah.
So, and okay, so behind the scenes, what we're using is the Azure OpenAI SDK, right?
Yes.
It is still beta. It is constantly changing. And because there's a bunch of changes, you can't just stick with the single version and upgrade without breaking changes. That includes us as well. So even though we abstract away a lot of the complexities, our internal logic does end up having to deal with some of these breaking changes as they go from version to version. Because of that, we do require that you kind of snap with us if you're upgrading the version of semantic kernel to whatever the latest version of Azure OpenAI is. If and when it becomes a stable long-term release and they aren't having any breaking changes, that'll give everyone kind of more flexibility. But because there are breaking changes with the underlying Azure OpenAI SDK, we unfortunately can't provide that level of flexibility for you to stay on a particular version. You would have to upgrade with us. I'm sure that wasn't the answer you were hoping for, but hopefully that does answer your question.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of a follow up on that. So the latest one I think is Semantic Kernel 1.5. Just curious if it's kind of if it's using the Azure OpenAI service with the latest version of the API.
Yeah, so we did kind of like a semi-emergency release last night. So we're now at 1.6 because people were asking, hey, there's a newer version of the Azure OpenAI SDK. So that is now supported. That's available in 1.6 if that's what you're needing to use today.
Okay, all right. So that helps. I just wanted to kind of see. So right now, to kind of summarize, there is not a plan to expose that out to make it easily changeable, but eventually, yes, right?
Yeah. Well, and at that point, it's less of we'll make it easier, changeable, and we'll have like some minimum supported version that you can use with Semantic Kernel until we have to rely on some extra whiz-bang feature, right? That would require an update.
Yeah, we, again, one of the things that we were looking at is potentially kind of add something like an HTTP handler or an interceptor, right, to change the version. But I guess, you all don't recommend that, right?
Oh, okay. Wait. So, okay, there's two things. There's the API, and then there's the SDK. You could do a custom HTTP handler. I don't think that would help though, because you would have to do more than just change the API version. You would have to actually like change the payload to match the version. That might be non-trivial.
Okay.
But to add there, the version is tailored to the model, the deployed model that you are using. So you change the model, and automatically the Azure connector to Azure OpenAI will use the API for that model, right?
Yes, there's also for a particular model, I believe, different versions of the APIs that eventually change. Yeah, I guess, Jeevan, just a follow-up question for you. Is this more of, I have access to like a really old model with an old API and I want to keep using it, or I want to use the latest and greatest API? Like where are you being pulled where you need more support from Semantic Kernel?
Yeah, and the reason is, for example, we get the message from from Azure saying that, hey, what, these models are being those older versions, they're being retired on so and so date, right? For example, I think the 2023 09 15 version preview, right? That all gets retired on April 24th. So we were looking at a strategy to kind of keep abreast and make sure that things don't break. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what we will commit to on Semantic Kernel is like we won't be using. I think actually someone raised in either the last office hours or a customer meeting that we're still using in some parts of the Python code and old SDK. So we're working on, an old API. So we're working on getting those updated. But yeah, like. If that's the concern, we'll continue to make it easy to, or we'll continue supporting the latest and greatest, so that it doesn't become an issue.
I do have a follow up also, if it's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and this is a slightly different thing, right? I think deep within the OpenAI client, which is again from this library, right? I think there is a client network timeout for like 100 seconds. And we've been kind of hitting that intermittently, and we were looking at a potential approach to kind of do that. One of the approaches that we tried to do was for the HTTP client, right, in DI, kind of set the timeout for it, but it doesn't seem to to honor that. The other approach that we are looking at is, potentially, when we are using the kernel, or inject an OpenAI client along with that service definition, right? Where we can kind of set that timeout over there. Is that something that you all have kind of run into? And again, from an approach perspective, is this something that you all recommend?
Yeah, so this is a bit out of my wheelhouse. Is there anyone on the semantic kernel team that's able to speak to this? I know we've run into this with customers in the past. I just forget what the recommended approach is. I don't know if you know.
I had a discussion about that like some weeks ago. It depend because I was having that issue exactly, and there is a closed issue, and one member of the team of your team proposed an approach which was using ASP.NET to add a custom time for that. But it's on the GitHub and on the open issues on .NET. That's a .NET thing, and it shows how to add that. I would have to search for it.
Okay.
But
Maybe we share that. And it sounds like this is something that we'll want to blog about or put on our Learn content.
Yeah, but it's exactly what GBAN proposed, more or less, like a custom HTTP client. Not a custom HTTP client, because it's already provided by the service, but we override the timeout.
God.
Yeah. Yeah, the custom HTTP client, we did try that. That doesn't kind of
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work. We have injected that. Yeah, that doesn't work. So that's why we were looking at an alternate approach. Is create an instance of the open
by Jose.
OpenAI.
LAT.
You open this.
And then I'm just looking through chat. Robert, I see your question as well on this. Any further questions that you have, or did this help answer?
What's your GitHub alias?
Jose. Yeah, this one. I was wrong. The team was right. But yeah, at the end, I think Stephen Todd proposed how to do that. Yeah, this is the good example, right? So this which is shown there. Yeah, exactly. This 5065 issue, right?
Great. Would you mind?
Reference.
Yeah, would
Yes,
you mind putting that in the chat?
It's doing that already.
Yeah.
If I can find the. Hold on. Sorry. Okay, cool. What was the next question?
There's a hand raised somewhere.
Yeah, hey, my question was along the same lines as Jivan around the Azure OpenAI Service API versioning. We've got those 5 preview versions deprecating in April 2nd of this year. Is the only recourse, excuse me, is to upgrade the version of Semantic Kernel? I know that some of those values are hard coded and can't be changed. Is that the only recourse to avoid, a resource not found on April 3rd?
What version of Semantic Kernel are you on right now?
They're on an older 1.1, I think. The customer.
1.01.
That's old.
Well, yeah.
That's at least like what's it called? That's at least a long-term supported thing. The upgrade should be non-breaking if it is something's gone terribly wrong.
Okay.
So yeah, I believe the best option would be to upgrade the version of Semantic Kernel. Because I don't think we won't be able to do a patch for that version for the HTTP request. It'd be a little bit more concerning if the customer was on a pre 1.0.1 version. But yeah, the upgrade should be on the easier side of things.
Okay, and you guys are that won't to Javon's point. You guys aren't going to expose a way of changing that. And when I do my add Azure OpenAI chat.
So
completion, we'll be able to add that as part of some parameter.
So yeah, I think I misunderstood the original question. So since this is the API version, I would have to honestly bring this back to the team. I thought it was the SDK version, so I apologize.
No, yeah, the service version. So when I call, because what happens if I put an invalid version in there, I get basically a resource not found. So on April 2nd, all their stuff's going to break. And I want to, we need to find a way of being able to kind of, because it is hard coded, you can't get to it. So
yeah, and it's an enum that is, I think, is being referred to deep within the code, right? It's an enum.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes, we'll get that.
Yeah.
We'll bring it with the team, and then I know on the Python side, last week we were still pointing out the old API version.
Got it.
Some plans to fix that.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
And Matthew, I just kind of pasted one of the notification, right? Just for reference. This is, what we got last week.
Yep.
Well, let's see. Where did you post this?
It should be in the chat.
Oh, is this that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, we'll bring this back to the team.
Thank you much.
Okay. Other questions? Sophia, was there any other in the chat?
I'm just looking through, Robert. I saw you said that it helps. Just want to make sure from your question around the network timeout that was all answered with the limit. There was no further questions that you had there. It looks like it is, but if you do have any further questions, feel free to come off of mute or add some more in chat as well. I'd love to be able to hear from you. And then it looks like there was some discussion around Python as well. Edward or Evan, anything to add that you're seeing?
I think we're getting everything handled in the chat. We just published a new Python package, and Tim is very quick to see that it was already published. So yeah.
Perfect. I'm not seeing any other questions right now, but does anyone else want to come off of mute and have any questions that they want to go through?
I can.
Oh, sure.
I'm here. It's fantastic. I made the team. I think it's incredible what these people is doing. Just sharing that with you guys. So it's thankful for Matthew and Evan and all the team and John and also you, Sheila. It's fantastic to be here, and I think it's great and incredible how this is going so fast with so few people. It's amazing. One thing I would like to add or ask maybe is I see a lot of effort in the pull requests, getting things done in the field of multimodality. Maybe you would like to share something about the strategy in multimodality, because I think it's amazing what it can be done with video, voice. There was I don't know if you realize, but there is this batch that you can do with Whisper, with some models deploying OpenAI and Azure OpenAI. At the moment batch, but I don't know what will come in next. So I think it's impressive how this thing is evolving.
Yeah. So as part of our spring 2024 roadmap, the second pillar, or the first pillar, was getting our SDKs to V1. The third one was first-class agent support. The second one was more connector support, right? So there's a bunch of PRs for things like Gemini and Mistral, but there's also all these multimodal ones that are coming in. So we have some audio coming in, image to text. I think we're working on a blog post for that. What we're doing right now is just making sure that we support the breadth of different connectors. But where I see Semantic Kernel going is making it easy to use all of these models together, right? So if you do want a single AI agent that can take in audio input, text input, can provide both those things back, that having this single kernel, this abstraction that has all these models that have everything like wired up internally, I think will be very powerful. And I think we're still early days on how we can architect this so that not only does it work, but it's also performant. A lot of these modalities like voice, speed, and latency are incredibly important for shipping a natural experience. We've been doing some internal testing on the Semantic Kernel team, and if you're waiting for the AI to say something, it's really awkward, right? And so we're taking all of these connectors that we're building for Semantic Kernel for these multimodal applications, and we're just now at the point where we're starting to architect how do we make these things work together in a seamless way, an easy way for developers, and also a performant way. So if we pull something out of our hat by build, great. But I guess rest assured that that is something that's very top of mind for the Semantic Kernel team, because we're not seeing that elsewhere in the open source community. How do you bring all these things together in a really seamless, easy to use way? So, yeah, thank you for the question. So get excited.
I am. And they need demos. So if you have any demo, you think about any business scenario or any kind of a scenario where it adds or improves productivity. Team is waiting for your demos, and you can share them. Even
Yeah, I was just curious, is the handlebars planner in .NET, does that allow you to use function calling?
of course.
Well, so it doesn't use OpenAI function calling. So it's kind of using our old. Well, it's basically asking the AI to write code. So I think we got an earlier question about the code interpreter. The way that works is the AI is just writing Python. With the handlebars planner, we basically have a prompt that asks it to write handlebars. So it's not using the OpenAI function calling native capabilities. Great question.
Sorry about that. I mixed that. I always think when you say handlebars planner, I think handlebars prompt.
Oh,
And
Okay,
any prompt
thank
you
you.
can use function calling.
Yeah, there was just a question from Tim asking, is there function calling in handlebars?
and so if we take a step back and like, why?
In handlebars itself, there's function calling.
Yeah, so yeah, if you just create a prompt with handlebars and then send it to the LM, it can use function calling, right? The handlebars planner, the value of having the AI write a chunk of code is you can actually see the entire thought process, the reasoning, all the functions it's going to call. So if there are scenarios where you want a user to approve all of the steps all in one go, doing that approach is better than function calling. Because function calling, basically the AI is kind of iteratively figuring out what it needs to do step by step. And if you do need to have an approval process, that could lead to less than ideal experiences where every single step you're having to click an approve button, right? So that's kind of the pros and cons of each. You're going to get, frankly, better accurate results with function calling. But if you want a single plan that you can approve by the human, you may want to do something more like the handlebars planner.
I have a good metaphor for that. For example, if you do a handlebars planner or handlebars prompt, right? You're streamlining everything. It's like having a orchestra director telling everybody what to do at the right moment. It's super efficient. Meanwhile, the other thing using function calling is like having an impromptu speech, and it has to figure out and think what to say at every moment after he says that is less optimal, and it will take more to do the same or play a similar music.
Yeah. Tim, I think I saw your hand raised. Or was your question answered? Accident.
Okay.
Thank you for this. That's helpful for me too.
Yes. Cool. We have a little less than 10 minutes. If there's any other questions, we can get those answered. Otherwise, we can start winding things down. All righty. Well, thanks all of you. Again, if you have any demos that you'd like to share in future office hours, we'd love to see them. I believe Sophia shared the email areas for you to reach out to us. And yeah, keep an eye on the blog. Thanks. Now that we have Sophia on board, we're doing a much better job connecting with all of you in the community and sharing all of our updates. So let's keep the conversation going. Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.